Thomas has still got a hand up. On the screen, on your icon, you're indicating you wish to speak.
Right, the meeting is now live.
Yeah. Brendan Rowan has got your hand up as well. Yes, good afternoon. For those that are not on Teams with me here in our group, I would say good afternoon to you all from Colne area. The first attempt at Colne area to do this virtual meeting, so I hope it goes well and our proceedings. We'll try and stick as close as we possibly can to the normal format, which is familiar to everybody. So welcome to the meeting. My name is Graham Warren. I'm the councillor for Fulridge. I expect all those watching, if they don't know who the councillors are, there is the council webpage which gives you a full explanation of the wards and how to contact individuals. So first of all, any councillor has anything to declare in the way of interest, would they please indicate now by clicking on the hand or speaking? Okay, I'm giving it quite a long time, which I know is tedious, but it gives you a chance to click on things. So there's no declarations of interest. I have the minutes of the previous meeting. If anybody has any objections or any comments on those meetings, would they please indicate they wish to speak? That is negative. So with your permission, I will say unanimously those meeting minutes are passed unless somebody indicates they are against. I therefore pass the minutes of the last meeting. That then brings us into planning applications, and the first one is 0893, which is the 32 houses and the changes at Langroyd Hall. Would anybody like to start to discuss this matter? Please indicate.
Chairman, we do have a speaker on this item.
Okay, shall we invite Mr. Burkitt then to speak? Mr. Burkitt, are you hearing me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Any councillor can't hear Mr. Burkitt? No, good. Mr. Burkitt, the floor is yours.
Well, I was advised, I'm acting on behalf of the applicant, and I was advised to make myself available should there be any questions.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. If you've got nothing, if you don't wish to actually speak in favour of this application, that's absolutely fine. If you obviously like to listen to the discussion, and we see if there's any specific questions arise. So that then brings me to any other councillor who wishes to speak. Councillor Coburn-Price.
Obviously, we all welcome a future for Langroyd Hall. It's been a lot of concern to a lot of people, and I ought to at least accept that I have been possibly deleterious in my actions here, because a lot of people have contacted me over several months, from when the first plans went in until quite recently, and they've been concerned. And I really perhaps should have contacted them to have told them that this meeting is not at 7 o'clock, it is not in its usual form. And I am a little concerned, having read some ill-informed comment on Colne Talk, that in fact some people may feel disenfranchised, with the best will in the world and organisation of Pendle Council, that they can't be taking part in this debate today. I think I have shared with several other councillors my views, which are that the new plans are much better than the original. More trees are retained, there's less crowding on the site. but I still have some concerns, as I see other statutory consultees do. LCC, for example, has concerns about parking. I know that there are things that we can condition. Rosemary Lyons was concerned about the height of that screening wall, which we can condition that to come down. My gut feel is that this site is still overdeveloped. I have some small and trivial questions, like if the hairdresser can't be open for the general public, really will there be the business out of 32 residents for the hairdresser to operate? These are trivial things. I think ultimately there are some councillors who are very skilled, like Councillor Foxley and Councillor Nixon, who are used in their actual job to reading plans and knowing exactly where things are on the site in terms of relation to the hall. But the rest of us perhaps don't have those skills. And I thought, given this is such a major application for Colne, for a historic building in Colne, perhaps we might, and perhaps some other councillors would agree with me, benefit from standing on the site with Neil Watson and sort of looking at Block C, for example, and saying, yes, it'll come out to here, you can see this there, and so on. I noticed that Rosemary Lyons wrote in her report that perhaps some extra visualisations and sections might have helped us in this regard. Those of us that are struggling to envisage the sort of massing from different angles of the blocks in relation to the hall and the trees and the buildings beyond, because we have listed buildings beyond, we have countryside beyond. So it's views in the site and views out of the site.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Colne. Just a couple of things, and then I'll ask Mr. Watson to come in because he's indicated he'd like to speak, and then I've got Councillor Mann. So first off, I think late on there was a couple of further complaints from residents that came through regarding obscuring of windows and a couple of others. That has been looked at, and the window in question is halfway up the stairs, so it is not an issue as far as excluding light to the living spaces. So I just give you that as a piece of information. And also in a recent conversation with Rosemary Lyons, generally speaking, I think her words were that she is in favour of this application. She believes it meets the criteria she's looking for. Her only exceptions have already been mentioned by Councillor Coburn-Price, which is the wall, and she wants to be involved in the landscaping. So that's the piece of information I have to share with you. So I'll now call Mr. Watson. I don't know whether there's anything further you wish to say, Neil.
No, Chairman, it was really not to go into the detail of it, just two points, and you've already covered it to a large extent. We have, or I have, and the case officer have been speaking to not the whole of Colne, and I accept Councillor Coburn-Price that it's a wider issue, but certainly some residents are joining the site and are answering specific questions for them. So hopefully they've got some answers, whether they like the answers or not. They've got them. So we've been doing that. Chairman, the visualisations were. Rosemary's view is that this scheme works or not according to the details, and she's her and Catherine Hughes, the case officer, I will have to compliment them. They've worked very hard on this. They've got a lot of the details, and they just thought the visualisations may help people understand the scheme better. But speaking to Rosemary earlier on, she is quite happy with this scheme.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Mann. Councillor Mann, can you hear me? If you switch on your microphone, please.
Just trying to switch it on. There you go. I just wanted to say, I think Councillor Coburn-Price's suggestion of going to the site would be a really excellent point. And I wish that we'd perhaps done that earlier. Having looked at all the plans, I must admit, it did confuse me, and I would have liked to have had the opportunity to go on site, and I think it would be quite good to do that anyway, so that we can really answer the questions that are put to us and sort of maybe reduce some of the fears that are being out there. So that would be really good to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Greaves. Councillor Greaves, if you unmute and speak, please.
Sorry, I clicked Mr.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, you can hear me now. Right, fine.
Good.
I clicked Mr. Watson's nose instead of the right thing. So there we are.
Yeah.
The application. I mean, I agree with what's been said. Really, it would be very nice to see it on site. I'm sure we can find ways of doing that in these socially distancing days, without breaching any rules. But the applicant, PH Capital One, am I right in thinking they are the owners of the site? They are the owners of the hall.
So that's a question.
Yes.
For, yeah.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Watson,
Neil
yeah.
Watson is shaking his head. He's nodding his head.
And Mr. Burkett.
Yes.
So, do we have any information? Perhaps the applicant's agent can tell us about this. Do we have any information about whether they have got contracts or agreements with any organisation or other body which will actually carry out this development, or is this entirely speculative?
Mr. Burkett, would you be able to help us?
Yes, to answer your question, there's a contractor set up, ready to start on site as soon as possible, and an organisation ready to occupy the building once it's complete.
That's good news. As soon as possible, does that mean that the work might start this year? There's continuing concern from a lot of people about the state of the roof of the hall and the fact that it hasn't been reinstated yet, despite the fact the council's instructed that it should be. And I think we've all been waiting for this planning application before taking any further action. But there is a lot of concern that another winter might cause a huge amount of damage, given the temporary nature of the roof. So is there some hope that this might be done this year?
Yeah, there's an appetite to start on site as soon as practical.
This year?
I would hope so.
And specifically, Chair, if I can just ask one further thing, specifically to get the roof in decent condition.
Well, I think that's got to be one of the priorities.
Okay, thanks.
Perhaps we could ask Mr. Watson to comment on that. Is it possible to condition this regarding the work on the roof before the winter? Would that be a reasonable condition?
Jim, you can't condition somebody to start, but one of the conditions is for a contract to be in place for the work on the hall to be carried out, so they can't undertake the other work on blocks B, C, D, E without the work on the hall starting. So that's how we approach that, Chairman.
Okay. Any more, Councillor Greaves, or are you finished?
Well, I just muted myself, but I will never refuse an opportunity, an invitation to say something. The other thing I wanted to just ask was whether Mr. Watson will respond to the suggestion that's been made that we have a site visit, or perhaps a couple of site visits, to look at it on site so people can show us exactly where these buildings would be, and we can get an idea in our mind, as Councillor Mann suggested, of what it will be like on the site.
Through you, Chairman, I think we can do that safely in terms of COVID-19 and distancing. Whether we do that in one or two groups depends on obviously how many councillors would wish to see it.
Okay.
Graham, can I just jump in? Is that all right?
Yeah. Councillor Fox.
Yeah, it's. I mean, Tony's addressed the roof problem, and it is, as we all know, a great concern. And as a council, it's all our fault. It's all our fault that this has happened. But I've forgotten the guy's name, the agent's name. But I feel that his response to, yes, the route, well, I'm not sure, and is a bit weak, and I think we need a more positive response to that. Whether he can give a positive response, and perhaps if he could have done, he would have done. But I just feel, it's like it's not going to happen any day soon. So that's just my comment on the roof issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Loyal. Councillor Foxley.
Thank you, Chairman. I just have a couple of questions. Can I just clarify, were updated 3D views ever requested? Or
do you want me to answer now, Chairman? Or, yes.
Chip in, Neil.
Chairman, it's not a requirement. We can't require those. Rosemary just thought they would help, so there has been a request. But it's not an instruction, because obviously the plans are the relevant things that we're here to assess.
Indeed, but they have been requested.
Yes.
From the applicant or from the agent.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I understand the concern that some councillors have about understanding the proposals. Obviously, as an architect myself, I don't share that problem, but all I would say is that I don't consider that a site visit would be a substitute for the information that 3D views would provide. And I think, personally, that the provision of some 3D graphics would go an awful long way to explaining the realities of the scheme to councillors and the public alike, whether in conjunction with the site visit or not by councillors. Now, clearly, a site visit would be councillors only, whereas anybody could see any 3D views that were put forward by the applicants. The other point I would make is that if there is to be a site visit, I think it needs to be very clear as to what the objectives of that site visit are, because it's been stated that we could perhaps explain to residents or to people that have maybe concerns about the scheme as a result of the site visit. But obviously, it's necessary to be clear that those people would not be at that site visit and could not be, because that's the nature of planning site visits by committee members, is it not? So, yeah, I just wanted to make those points. And then I have a question, really, for Mr. Burkett, if I may, which is how much I noticed that Block C, the level of Block C has been lowered in the latest proposals. And I'm just wondering if he has a figure that he can give us as to the amount by which the block has been lowered. If that could be put to Mr. Burkett, if he can hear me, perhaps he could answer.
Mr. Burkett?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
If I may just respond to a few points that have been raised. The concern by the councillor about timing of doing the roof. I can give absolute assurance the roof will be the priority work. That we've got people ready to start. The slight hesitancy that was detected, maybe because we have a BAT license process to go through, and at the moment, I'm not entirely sure of the timing of that license. It's with Natural England. So all I can say is the BAT license is ongoing, but as soon as you get that license, it frees us up to work on the roof immediately.
Okay.
Secondly, concerning 3D visualizations, again, if members feel that would help, we can certainly prepare those, no problem. The final question concerning Block C. Block C hasn't been lowered in terms of floor levels. What we have done is we've changed the design and the massing and the roof so that we have a flat roof as opposed to a pitched roof. So the overall ridge height at the top of the roof has been lowered. I can give you exact dimensions in due course. I don't have that to hand.
Could I come back on that, Chairman?
Yeah.
I am a little confused, I have to confess then, regarding Block C floor levels, because from the elevational information, it did appear that there was a bigger step between it and the adjacent Block D than on the previous proposals. And also, the thing that made me first start to look more closely at that was the fact that the previous proposals showed ramp access to from the car park, the central circular car park area, to Block C, whereas now, and between Block C and the original building, now there's a flight of steps between Block C and the original building, quite a substantial flight of steps, and a very much more substantial ramping arrangement between the car parking and Block C. There's also indicated on the plan embankments. So I am confused now, because I expected that the answer would be, I don't know, half a metre or whatever. But if you're saying categorically that it hasn't moved vertically, I understand and absolutely agree, frankly, that the changes to the massing have had a very much beneficial effect on that block. If anything, my concern was maybe that it had been lowered too much, and that the actual impact that has in terms of the accretions of steps and additional ramps might actually detract more from the block than if it from the setting than if the block was slightly higher. So that was the reason for my question. Could that be clarified? Mr. Burke, you are absolutely quite sure that the floor level hasn't changed?
No, it's the same as the previous version, floor level.
Can you explain the issues that I've just raised then?
Yeah,
regarding the ramps and steps and so on.
We were asked to provide some additional information regarding ground levels by the case officer. So we looked more carefully at the gradients and the levels between the main circular courtyard and C. And it transpired that in order to comply with disability regulations, we made a ramp, and we had to make it the right width. So we rationalised some of the ramp areas. Secondly, we omitted the cafe, and so therefore the people travelling from Block C into the main building for the cafe that relationship is no longer needed. Therefore, we changed it from ramps to steps, because it minimised the amount of civil engineering, because we realised that most people, now that the cafe is gone, that particular circulation route would be subservient.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. You're happy with that, Councillor Foxley? Or
well, the response makes sense. Yes. In essence, if I'm putting it really brutally bluntly, the original site plan was slightly wrong, and you've corrected it.
Yep. Okay. Okay, so I've got Councillor Nixon. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, firstly, I just find it a bit frustrating that the request for a site visit has been made now. That could surely have been made in advance of this meeting by writing. That way we could have just dealt with this now, but that's by the by. Secondly, could we not condition it, Neil, to basically make works of the roof a pre-start condition in order to ensure the roof is protected as a matter of urgency? And the third point is that we need to, if this site visit is going to take place, it needs to take place like yesterday in order to make sure the roof is protected. Winter's got nothing to do with it. It's windy today. It's a good job it's not raining. The longer we leave it and dilly-dally, the worse it's going to get. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. I've still got your hand up, Councillor Grace. Could you switch it off unless you were asking to speak? If you unmute, I can't hear you. That's it. Okay, I can't hear you. Councillor Foxley, you put your hand up again. Do you wish to come back? Councillor Foxley, you have your hand up.
So, sorry, Chair, I didn't put my hand up again. All I did was turn my microphone off, sorry.
Right, that's it. That's absolutely fine. Now, Councillor Greaves, Councillor Greaves, do you wish to speak? No? Okay. So really what I'm looking for is a proposal from somebody. If you're reticent, I will put a proposal from the chair. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was hoping for a response from Neil Watson on my query about making the roof work a pre-start condition.
Okay, Councillor. Thank you, Jonathan. Mr. Watson.
Chairman, there's two aspects to this. One, there's still an outstanding enforcement notice appeal to require the roof to go back on. That will very much be based on the license that they have to get, the BAT license, and as soon as that is sorted, we expect them to go back on. But Chairman, the condition, sorry, I haven't got it in front of me. One of the conditions requires the contract to be in place, a pre-contract start. So that's the and that would ensure that works on the whole go on as first work. So that's how we've approached it, Chairman. So I think it is covered in terms of enforcement notice and that condition.
Okay. Yeah. Everybody's happy with that. Does anybody like to put a proposal on the table? If not, I'll propose something. Councillor Coburn-Price.
Well, I propose, and I apologise to Councillor Nixon, you're absolutely right. We should have suggested a site visit before. It was, yeah, I think the plans are detailed. I think the officer's report is excellent, but I still feel that many people would benefit from that standing on the ground. And I agree with Councillor Foxley as well, that possibly even better than standing on the ground would be these visualisations. So I feel if we have them both, that's even better. And I would like to give the people that have written to me, at least, heads up that it's going to be discussed again, so they don't feel disenfranchised by this new system. None of this is Pendle Council's fault in any way. So I would like to propose that we have as soon as possible a site visit and the visualisations and bring it back to the next Colne Area Committee.
Okay, Councillor Foxley has indicated to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify what I meant when I said that the site visit would be no substitute for 3D views. Clearly, you stand on a site, you can, if you spend a fair bit of time measuring stuff, you can say the corner of the building will be about here, this corner of the building will be about here. What you can't illustrate to people on site is how tall things are and what it's going to look like. So that's what I mean when I say about the objectives of that meeting need to be fairly clear. But I think it's regrettable that we're only raising the idea of a site visit now, but I think perhaps I would reluctantly support that view.
Councillor Lord.
Yeah, on the subject of site visits, in the past, this is all we ever did. You know, every week we had at least one site visit, and we don't seem to do that anymore. But for me, personally, that would be very helpful because I'm struggling to see things. If I'm there on the ground, I'll understand it a lot better. So yeah, I support Councillor Corbyn Price's suggestion about the site visit.
Okay, Councillor Law. Before if anybody else wishes to speak or we take a vote on that, could I just play devil's advocate and put one thing before you? We've had this discussion with many buildings over my term at Colne, particularly the one in down by the Cenotaph, when probably we didn't necessarily get the complete outcome we wanted, but the building is in use and it is preserved. I feel the same imperatives with this planning application. I don't think the application is perfect, but if it pushes on, gets a roof on it and gets the work started, I would hate us all to be having a conversation in 2 years' time when we're talking about the rubble that used to be Langroyd Hall. Now, that's no reason you should feel pressured, but we can talk forever. The rain doesn't stop, neither does the wind. For my money, I think we should vote on this as it stands today and give the developer a very clear indication as to whether this is okay or not. If not, we prevaricate all summer, and I don't think that's a good idea. So I've got Councillor Clegg wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Can we have some sort of an indication of the agent as to how quickly it can get the visual effects to us? Because I think we need to have them realistically before we do the site visit. I think it would be an advantage to look at them to get some idea of heights, etc., before we actually go on site and have a look. And the only other comment I've got to make about, I'm not opposed to having a site visit. I think it's probably the best way forward, but we must have the visual effects and the site visit done before the next meeting in a month, because that roof has been off long enough. We don't want to be sitting around for 2 or 3 months waiting for visual images, etc., and then it's getting nearer and nearer to winter and there's still no roof on it. We've got to move in the next month or so.
Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Mann, did you wish to speak? Unmute.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah,
I just think that we're saying that we want to go very quickly on this. However, it looks like the bat issue is going to hold us up anyway. So I would like to know when they would actually have the information that they could go ahead regarding this bat problem, because we don't want to be rushed into it. And if they've got to wait about in order for the bats to be sorted, then there's no reason why we shouldn't have both the site visit and obviously the visuals as well without causing a problem to the history of the hall.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Foxley.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just, I mean, in turn, I agree with what Councillor Mann's just said, in as much as clearly the bat issue is a prerequisite of doing anything to the roof, and from my experience, I mean, natural England can be somewhat tardy with their responses. So I don't think we should expect necessarily that they're going to be providing that any day soon. So, you know, I don't think it would make sense to deny councillors the opportunity to do a site visit when it's quite likely, shall we say, that the bat issue will hold it up just as long anyway. Thank you.
Right. So I have a proposer in Councillor Coburn Price. Do I have a seconder for that? Which is a site visit and to request for these 3D views. Councillor Mann has indicated to speak.
I'll second that. Do you want to second that, Alice? I'll do it. I'm happy.
Yeah, well, put it up.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
so that's Councillor Lord has seconded that.
Yeah.
Councillor Foxley's still got his hands up, and so has Councillor Mann. So we have a proposal on the table. So would you like to indicate whether you are for or against? So if you put your hands up for all those that are for the proposal. Okay, so I'm assuming from that, from what I've seen, there is nobody against it. Could you indicate or speak to me if you are against this proposal? Councillor Mann, you've indicated your hand, so I'm assuming switch your hand off now. That would be great.
There you go.
Lovely, thank you. So I have nobody against this. So unanimously, we are asking for a site visit before the next meeting and requesting 3D imagery. Is that correct? Okay, we're happy with that. Thank you very much. So we can now move on to 0962, which is ELE Advanced Technology at Colne. Do I have any? I have some speakers here. Do we have Catherine Mousdale? Is Catherine Mousdale available?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Good afternoon. You have the floor.
Thank you for listening. I'm going to give you my view of what's happened over the years, if that's okay. I've lived here since 1987 when my children were quite young, and Maltool, which was the factory then, was quite a small, compact place. And it used to run during normal working hours and at the end of the working day, it would close. And also at weekends. So residents had respite from the noises that emanated from this place then. Now, it was closed for about 2 years or so, and it was blissfully quiet. Then ELE came, and they work 24/7, which means that it's open continuously. And so we get continuous noise, and it expanded to about 3 times the size of the original factory. Now, that required very noisy air conditioning, which we hear continuously, day and night. Now, one of the conditions that the proposed site was enlarged upon was that they kept doors and windows closed, but they don't do that. Regardless of what time of day or night, if they feel the need, they open the roller shutters, and a lot of noise emanates from that place. The thing is, it's in a valley, and we live above it, and we overlook it. So any noise coming from it is amplified up the sides of the valley and along it. Also at 3 o'clock or so, when shifts changed, employees come for a break or whatever. There's noise from their cars. When they have a break, they're outside, often in the summer, and that's noisy. People have been woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, the proposed extension of the factory is about 2.5 times the size again. And the Barnfield Close extends along the length of that valley. So it's going to extend right along to the bottom of Clarence Street, which is near Acresfield. That's going to be a huge building. Now, I'm just wondering if there's commentary on the noise assessment report, and it assumes that doors and windows will be kept shut as much as possible. Now, this doesn't happen even now. Could I suggest that if permission is granted, that there be a specific condition requiring approval of the air conditioning system, considering it is 24/7, and we're disturbed even now. The other point I'd like to raise is about the parking and turning circle that is proposed. Now, the existing road around the site, it will be extended along the valley, all along Barnfield Close, and the turning circle is at the end in front of just below Acresfield. So parking, I think, now is planned to face. Oh, where have you gone? Can you hear me? Something's happened.
Hear you. Just keep talking.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yes, the map. Thank you. So the road will run along the length of the building facing our houses. Now, that's going to be quite noisy, especially with proposed parking directly across the river from us. So we'll hear that noise day and night. Huge vehicles, HGVs, are very noisy. They'll come along that way, and when they're changing gear, of course, that is more noise when they come to negotiate the turning circle, and then they'll drive right across again to the end of the road to Cotton Tree. Now, as regards that, could I say this, please? If the planning application goes ahead, could the layout of the car parking and manoeuvring area be varied to require those areas to be on the other side of the building so as not to impact on Barnfield Close and Acresfield residents whose gardens and quiet areas face the river. And it's, at night we have to take into account headlights and that sort of thing, and noise. So, and it's shift work 24/7. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll have Brenda Rowing. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can I have permission to share my screen so I can show you where we live in relation to the factory?
Yes, by all means do. I would just ask you, if possible, try not to repeat anything that's already been said. We've heard what's been said. Sometimes there's a tendency to say the same thing but 20 different ways. So that would be great if you could do that. Thank you. Yeah, I understand that. Just a second. I am trying to share my screen. Sorry. Sorry, just be a moment. Can you see that? Yeah, we can. Thank you. Okay, so this is just the, yes, I won't reiterate what Martina has said, except to say that I completely back up every single thing that she has said. And the two small red crosses here are where we live. So I'm number 18 Barnfield Close. Martina Mosdale is number 16 Barnfield Close. I'm showing you where the current factory is. And the only thing I would say, I'm not going to repeat what Martina has said, but there are three large shutter roller doors that are just here where the 3 X's are, and they are not kept closed at all. I walk practically every day along the footpath here and go to Wycollar as a circular walk, and either 1, 2 or 3 of those doors are open at any one time. So that's the first thing I just wanted to say about noise. I think what I mainly want to talk about other than that is about landscaping. So, I'm very concerned. We look out, and I'm looking out here from the back from my living room onto this area right now, which is south facing, and this is currently green. I know it belongs to ELE, but it's currently green, and then there are woods at the back. We're talking about 2.5 times size site, which is going up
One of the conditions is that the samples of wall and the roof have to be made available for approval, but there is no condition about landscaping. The report, page 29, does say, and I'm quoting, concerns have been raised that no landscaping scheme has been submitted with the application. However, the provision of acceptable landscaping can be acceptably controlled by condition, but there is no condition. So I just wanted to make that point really, really clearly. It would be really good if there was some condition there about what is deemed to be acceptable landscaping. At the very least, we'd be looking for screening, tall screening trees that are fast growing, that could very quickly shade that, hide that site as much as possible. And that, of course, would help with noise control as well. I think Martina has made the point about noise, so I won't say anything further about that. Thank you very much.
I mean, just to assure you, we can add a condition to this planning application to cover the landscaping issue quite easily. So thank you for that. Simon Rowan.
Hello, I'm just getting myself sorted out.
Sure.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to talk to the councillors. I agree with both what Brenda and Martina have said, and I would just like to add a very brief point, which about the noise, which is that we're on the north, on Bournefield Close. We're on the north of the factory at the moment. On the south, there's no residential residence on the south, which is just points towards the trees and the woods behind. And if the noisy extraction fans could be placed on that side, then I think that may help a lot, because obviously with the site being 2.5 times, and the noise will increase accordingly. So it may be worth just considering if the noise in noisy parts of the factory could be south facing. And also in the design process, the noise mitigation factors are taken into account. It does say in the report that problems with noise can be dealt with later on. But if the design stage, these are put in place, then it makes it a lot easier to sort of plan for noise rather than trying to do anything about it once the building's up. So it's just a matter of if the plans could be to mitigate noise, which would not only benefit the residents but also benefit the people working in the factory. So that's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your input. I'll now ask Mr. Watson to he's indicated to speak. So I'll ask you, Mr. Watson, if you want to speak now.
Chairman, just a few brief words. The design of the factory and the working of the factory itself, I don't think is an issue. It's noise breakout and external noise, which is the issue for me. Chairman, deliveries are restricted under one of the conditions, so there shouldn't be manoeuvring of vehicles, etc., outside of those hours, which are in normal working hours. But Chairman, if you were concerned as a committee about those outside activities, about people going outside for a break, etc., you can certainly put a condition on restricting that in unsociable hours. And Chairman, there will be no issue either with putting a condition on about you wanting details of extraction systems, etc. If that is your wish to do that, that's perfectly acceptable, as will be a landscaping condition, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Watson. I've got Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Please. Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you to the residents who have talked to us today.
Can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
I think Graham's having trouble, or is it me? Anyway, right, I'll crack on.
I don't know.
Thank you to the residents who have spoken. I fully appreciate what it's like to live nearby a factory. For 20 years I lived on Varley Street across from NR Engineering, and in the summertime when you got your windows open and the factories have got the doors open in the middle of the night, it is unpleasant. I went down to the ELE factory on Tuesday for a site walk around myself, and yes, those shutters at the side were all open, and the noise was coming out. And I think it's not unreasonable to ask, that this the query on the landscaping condition is applied. I think that's a very reasonable request by the nearby residents, and to limit the impact on residential amenity. ELE technology is they're an extremely good firm in what they do. They're a specialist in their field. They're a credit to Pendle. So I'd like to, if I can, support them whilst at the same time supporting the nearby residents. So with that in mind, Chairman, I'd like to move approval with those conditions attached in respect of noise abatement and landscaping, if I may. Thank you.
So I think there was 3 things, if I can just nail it, so we know what we're saying. So there was the extraction system, I think, was regarding the noise of that was one. Landscaping was the other, and unsociable hours noise due to staff coming outside of the building. Are you happy with those 3 as conditions?
Are you asking me, Chair?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm happy. I'm happy with those. I think the residents who have been speaking were nodding their heads as well at the same time, more or less. So, yes, I will be happy with that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so I've got Councillor Greaves next. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Chair. I can remember, well, can I start by thanking the residents who've come and explained the problems so clearly, and can I say I think I basically support the motion with those conditions as proposed by Councillor Nixon, and I think perhaps I'd like to hear a bit more exactly what the details of the conditions would be. Can I just say that I remember when Maltools came to Coventry, and they were a small firm, as Martina said, and they were nothing like as what is being proposed now. I think we need to realise that although the size of the factory that's being proposed is pretty well doubling the floor area, I think, in terms of the length of it and the potential impact upon residents in Barnfield and Acresfield, it's 2.5 times the present factory. So I think that's the problem. And then with the proposal for the lorries to go right past and turn round, it's further than that. So I don't think the assessment of the noise problems in the reports is adequate, and I'll just come back to that in a minute. As far as I think we've got to realise that if this were a new application and it were a greenfield site, we would not be giving permission for a new factory on that site now. Things have changed, and I don't think there's any way at all that we'd want industrial development on that particular site. But it's there, and as Councillor Nixon said, it's the kind of firm that we want in Pendle and want to expand and develop in Pendle, and it's not part of our job, I don't think, to stop it doing that. The one little question, some of the photographs I think it's in the ecological appraisal, some of the photographs show a number of quite small tatty sheds and so on scattered around the existing building. And I wonder if anybody knows what's going to happen to those and whether arrangements can be made for them to be removed and for the site to be cleared up a little bit. The second thing is that it's slightly hilarious, really, that the report starts off talking about seeking to ensure a particularly high design standard that enhances the character and appearance of the area and encouraging high standards of quality in designing new development, etc. Well, it's an industrial shed, and so we're not going to get enhanced development and enhanced design. We've got to accept that, I think. And all that really is going to be possible is to decide what colour it is, to perhaps not stand out too much against the background. I think there are three issues raised by the objectors from around the site. The first is the extra traffic, and it suggested that perhaps it's 10 extra vehicles an hour. Are they industrial vehicles? Are they commercial vehicles, the extra 10 an hour? And is that what it says? And would that be only during the delivery hours, or would it be right through 24 hours? In which case, if we're putting on, quite rightly, conditions on the time of deliveries, there might be a lot more during those hours when they're allowed to. I don't know if Mr. Watson can provide a bit of understanding, for me at least, on that. As far as the noise and landscaping, I think, are the two things that we can do something about. The report, I think, is unacceptable. It simply says, and the recommendation for the conditions, at the end of those, there are some notes. They're not conditions at all, they are notes. And they just say, with regards to the noise assessment, it is assumed that all roller doors and windows will be kept shut as much as possible, according to section 5.4, to ensure the acoustic integrity of the building is maintained. Therefore, if in the warmer months of the factory becomes too hot for staff, alternative ventilation and cooling methods should be sought and windows and doors should be kept closed. Well, no doubt they should, but surely, and I'll seek confirmation that what Councillor Nixon is moving is that we put a condition on to say this will happen, not that it should happen in a vague sort of note at the end. It also says there should be no burning of any materials on site, and we put a condition on to state that there will be no burning of materials on site. It says the applicant is cautioned against permitting any bonfire to take place during demolition. Can we not condition?
Can I just jump in, Tony? When you turn your head, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I do beg your pardon. I'm learning this thing. I'm turning my head so I can read. I'll turn my eyes so I can read the thing. Did Mr. Watson? Did you get what I've just been talking about?
Sure, I think I got most of it. Yes.
What I'm basically saying, can we, all the stuff at the end of the report, which says this should happen and that should happen about noise in summer, etc., and keeping windows shut, and no burning on site, and no burning on site during demolition, can we actually put conditions on to make sure that that does not happen? And the final thing I will say about the noise, has it been looked at to see whether, as the residents have suggested, the access road for vehicles could go along the northern side of the building and not along the southern side, and therefore it would not affect them at all? It would involve changing where the doors are on the new extension. As I understand it, there are two more, looking at the plans, there are two more access doors for stuff that's been delivered, presumably, in the new building, perhaps more, but I can see two. Could those be on the other side of the building so that the access road could go around the back? I've looked at the plans. I'm not completely convinced there is room for it, but I think there might be. So my question on that is, has that been looked at, and has it been rejected, or is it just assumed that it has to be on the south side between the building and the back? Oh, the other thing I wanted to ask was if landscaping is going to be crucial. The present landscaping between the houses on Barnfield Close and the building has got gaps in it. But by landscaping, I'm talking about trees. There are gaps. Is it possible to enhance that landscaping and to make sure that the density of new trees at least will will ameliorate the noise, mitigate the noise in summer and spring and autumn at least, even if it does so less in winter. And because landscaping is so important, is this a scheme where, as councillors, we could be provided with the details of the landscaping scheme when it's put in, so that at least we can make our comments to the staff who make the decision on these things through their delegated powers?
Through you, Chairman, I'll try. There's quite a lot there, so Councillor Greaves, if I miss anything, please let me know. The number of vehicles is an average of all vehicles on site. They certainly don't have over 24 hours, 240 commercial vehicles going onto the site. It's a lot less intense than that. Chairman, those vehicles are the delivery vehicles. Are restricted under a condition. But Chairman, I get the point about the roller shutters and about the other activities outside. I think we can control that, and it would be part of what Councillor Nixon's suggested condition. So we have a statement to say how you would prevent noise breakout through roller shutters, through external activities, etc., and get the company to give us information around that through a condition. So I'm quite happy we can deal with that. Chairman, the sheds on site, they go as part of this, except there is a substation there, and that would be the one that would remain. Chairman, burning on site is controlled through the construction method statement, and that's condition 13, and we expect them to say how debris, etc., would be disposed of. Here, because it's new construction as opposed to demolition, you wouldn't expect burning to happen anyway, but it would still be controlled. Landscaping, Chairman, yes, put a condition on there. Details can always be shared if that's what members wish to happen. We don't normally consult on those because that's the process that we have, but if you wish that to happen, I could certainly put that in place. And Chairman, the issue about the road going around the back is a little more involved because the swales and their flood alleviation scheme is all at the back of the premises, so it has never been looked at. And Chairman, it would surprise me if that was practical, because you would have to redesign the whole flood alleviation process.
Can I just ask one other question? The conditions relating to deliveries and restricting deliveries, restricting commercial access really to daytime and mornings on Saturdays, will that apply to the whole of the new operation, including the existing building?
Chairman, it would have to, because it's a single entity. You couldn't have vehicles visiting the turning area at 10 o'clock at night saying we're servicing the front part of the building, because it's covered by this whole planning permission, so it would apply to the whole site, yes. Chairman, just to be clear though, there would be shift changeovers. It wouldn't apply to staff coming in and out on shift patterns, so that would be an area where it couldn't function unless staff could obviously come in and out, so it would only apply to those delivery activities.
Hello, this is Lynn, the committee administrator. If I could just point out that Councillor Waugh, he did drop off the call and he now has no speaker, so we can't hear him speak. So if perhaps Councillor Nixon could take over the chairmanship of the meeting. And in the meeting chat, Councillor Waugh has voted in favour of approving this application.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Neil, were you finished? Sorry, or have you got some more to say?
No, I finished. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Okay. Well, right. We have a hand up. LG on the screen. Is that Tony? Bear with me. I'm just trying to work this out. Okay. Well, we've got Councillor Paul Foxley and Councillor.
I've muted myself, but my hand's still up, so it's now down. No, it's not. It's down now. Yes. Okay. I've now muted. No, I haven't yet.
Right. Councillor Foxley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, just a couple of points. I disagree. I have to say that I disagree with Councillor Greaves's somewhat jaundiced view of the design of industrial buildings. Having designed some very beautiful ones myself, I don't see that there's any reason we should lower ourselves to expectations where we're only thinking that we can influence the colour of the cladding. Having said that, I wanted to make a more important point. It's been mentioned about a line of trees, great, but lines of a single line of trees or even a double line of trees along the boundary will not mitigate noise. It will obviously screen things visually, but it takes a lot more than an odd line of trees to make any difference to the noise breakout. If you were to maybe raise, use some of the spoil from the excavation or something to raise a banking at the edge of the car park, something that's solid like that can have a much greater effect. But that would very much depend on the line of, literally the line of sight between the source of the noise, i.e. the engines, and the properties involved. And I suspect that with them being raised up the hill, it would be pretty much impossible to mitigate that without moving the source of noise elsewhere, which has been, I guess, pretty much discounted because of the drainage and swales. The other point on that is that, of course, if you reverse the entrance to the existing building to the other side, you probably muck up all the internal configuration of the way the whole factory works. So, yeah, I think we need to be, if we're going to vote on this on the basis of an approval, we need to accept that there will be some additional noise, but by condition that can be somewhat restricted, at least for those annoying reversing beep 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 things on delivery vehicles, so that at least those wouldn't be occurring at night. But you would clearly get, as has been said, you'd get shift traffic during the night. So, I would actually like to. Nobody's seconded this proposal yet, have they?
No.
No. Well, I will second the proposal. We're subject to those conditions.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Mann.
Just a moment. Yes, there you go. I'm just very concerned about a lot of planning permissions that we give. The landscaping elements do tend to just get forgotten, or they get tacked on, and often the councillors don't know what's going to be happening in those respects. I can see from what happened at Unique Clean in Thomas Street with all those trees being knocked down when they weren't supposed to be, and it's still a right mess. And it's these sorts of issues, landscaping, trees, hedging, those sorts of things that we should really be concentrating on in a site like this, which would really have a problem with those who are living nearby. And some sort of screening, it's not good enough. We just need to know what actually we're going to get before I think we can approve it. That's my view.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Foxley, you got your hand up? Councillor Mann, your hand is also up still. Okay, well...
Sorry, I didn't wish to speak. I didn't notice.
Councillor Greaves. You're on mute.
Okay, you can see me and hear me now.
Yeah.
What a thrill. I think that what Councillor Mann's just said, I just want to clarify what Mr. Watson said, that on this application at least, we as individual councillors at least will see the landscaping proposals and we'll have the opportunity, A, to discuss them with residents or anybody else we want to, and B, to put our comments into the staff. And it's then up to Mr. Watson and his people to take account of what we said, but I can't believe they won't do so. So on this, I think I just want to clarify that exactly that is what is going to happen.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Greaves. Yeah,
Chairman, I would suggest you put that as part of the recommend. So the resolution that you put, that you give me or my staff an instruction to bring that landscaping scheme forward by direct consultation, as opposed to the normal route we would take a satisfying a condition.
I'll move that as an addition then. Okay. If the chairman accepts that, I will move that as an addition to the motion is moved.
Yeah, that's fine, Councillor Greaves. Thank you. Yeah, Neil, could we delegate authority to you now that Councillor Foxley has alluded to the fact that trees or landscaping is not really going to mitigate the noise? Could we delegate authority to you to come up with the appropriate solution for that?
Our assessment assumes that the trees weren't there. There's no barrier between the two, between the site and the residential properties. So that is taken into account. I entirely agree with Councillor Foxley. Trees, people think they make acoustic barriers, but they don't make any difference. You have to have a solid barrier there. So it will be dealt with in terms of the conditions that you've already outlined about outside working and extraction flues, etc.
Thank you, Neil. Right, I'd just like to stop at Lynn. I think Graham keeps trying to get back into the room. His hand keeps appearing.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, okay, so I'm eventually back in. I'll let you finish this item off, Jonathan, and I'll just keep quiet if I may.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor
Can
Thomas.
Can I just add one further thing? Can you hear me?
Well, Councillor Thomas has had her hand up for ages, Tony.
Oh, sorry.
Bear with me.
Come back. Yeah, okay.
Mary?
Can I just say, I've had people from down Barnfield Close, not just Martina and Brenda, but people further on. And it's the noise that they're really concerned about, being awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, walking around the house thinking, you know, what is this? Is there anything we can do specifically for this air conditioning or the noise of vehicles? I mean, you say, Neil, that we can stop the wagons coming over the night, but what about this noise that's there all the time? And obviously when you're in bed and it's summer, you can't have your windows open, and they say even with the windows closed, when the doors are open, they can't sleep. Is there anything particularly that we can do about this noise? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Neil?
Through you, Chairman, the way I'm thinking of looking at the condition would be by putting a relevant limit on the boundary to the site from the ambient noise that you would get from the factory itself. And that's probably the best way, and that would also include any existing noise from the site. So I think we can deal with it that way. Just to be clear, I think there will be some activity at changeover time, which you can't fully mitigate against, but that will be, you know, your 10 to 10, 10 past 10, and when shifts change. But everything else, I think we can put an appropriate condition to control.
Thank you, Neil. Councillor Greaves, last speaker, and then we'll go to the vote.
Very briefly, I think we need to realise there are two aspects to the noise. One is the noise from the factory, and the existing factory, and it is assumed there'll be similar noise from the new factory, which there may or may not be, but that's assumed, which is, and it's the problem with noise, where people come along with their noise meters, the environmental health, and they say, well, it's not above so many dBs and so on. And people say, yes, but it's a persistent whining noise, which actually drives people mad. And noise is such a difficult thing like this. And the noise report is farcical. It says that there isn't going to be a problem for Acresfield, for example, because there's already ambient noise from the river and from birdsong. Well, river noise and birdsong might get people to sleep. It might wake them up in the morning, but they don't mind. It's the whine from the factory. So it's not the total amount of noise, it's the type of noise. And then the second type of noise is from the commercial vehicles. And this is where it might be possible to look at Councillor Foxley's idea of some kind of banking along at least the turnaround for these, the new big turnaround for the commercial vehicles, where they will be obviously in very low gear and potentially making a lot of noise. And if it's close to the vehicles, I don't know, it might mitigate the noise even further up the hill. We'll have to go and have a look at it. But I just make those 2 points.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Greaves. Right, we have one more absolutely last speaker now, is Councillor Sarah Colburn-Price, and then I think we'll go to the vote on this.
Just briefly to say that my background professionally has been for 20 years in clean rooms, and the technology of clean rooms is infinitely different from how it was 20 years ago. So I don't know how old this building is, but I very much suspect that this clean room will be a result for residents. Margaret Foxley and I went for a site visit. I suspect this will be a quieter building. Obviously, these conditions, one resident has contacted me, and his biggest concern was people sort of going on a break and making lots of noise outside the building. And that really is down to the management of the company to make sure that doesn't happen. But the building, it being so much larger and controlled from an air conditioning and clean room perspective, now should be a much more pleasant environment to be inside as well. So it could be that this investment actually makes a better position for residents, especially if the screening is done along the riverbank. I've walked along that riverbank and I've seen those people out there too. So I have seen it, and I can imagine that at night it must be irritating. But I think the technology here is working in favour of the residents potentially.
Thank you, Councillor Price, for that expert input. Okay, so we have a motion on the table, and that has been seconded, along with a few conditions. I'm just wondering whether Neil or Lynn can just remind us of the conditions so that everybody's happy and has clarity before we go to the vote, please.
Chairman, thank you. The noise condition would be twofold, two conditions. One about the extraction units and how they have to be installed. The other will be about outside activities and general noise at the boundary of the site. The other would be a landscaping condition, and that will be the resolution is that will be shared with members not approved at an officer level.
Thank you. Okay, so on the assumption, therefore, that all the councillors who are entitled to vote are happy with that, I therefore ask for your vote, basically, all those in favour. So I'm not sure whether everybody is actually visible on the screen from where I'm looking, but we've got, well, I'm in favour, so I'll raise my hand. I think it's fair to say that's carried. Okay, thank you. Right, Graham, if you wish to take the helm.
Okay, can you confirm that you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we'll try again then. So the last one is the reopening of Pendle Town centres. I'll put something onto the table that has already been discussed in the last couple of days, and it will hopefully start the discussion off. So one of the things that's been suggested is that the Colne bid team would be ideally placed to deal with this due to their extensive database which covers all the businesses in Colne and their personal contacts. And I understand that's one of the functions that David Clegg has sitting on that board. Now, I've taken legal advice, and we cannot give the money to them as a cheque. Here's £15,000. Go on and do it. Now, I do know that for the last 2 weeks, they have been working on something called basically to get Colne back to work again, which is exactly what this document is. So they're ahead of the curve because they've already started doing the work. I'm sure Sarah will be able to give you a lot more detail because she's involved with them. Now, I understand that providing whatever they're doing meets the criteria of the document in front of you, then that could be due. So what I'm suggesting from the chair is that we invite them to bring forward projects that they've already been working on that fulfills this requirement from the government, this ambition, and then it will be under councillor control to give them the money if it's suitable. And I would, if it was me that was doing it, if you decide that it should be with my authority as the chairman, then I would always ask Philip Mousdale or Dean Langton's authority for what they're asking. Is that okay? So that's where I am. I'll leave that open to discussion. Councillor Coburn Price has indicated, so has David.
You've forgotten the planning application, Graham.
Oh, I'm sorry. Absolutely right.
I don't know whether, now you've done the introduction, we should deal with this item.
I agree.
And then go back to the planning application.
Go back. Sorry. Yeah. Having a part-time chairman, that's the trouble.
I can give a little bit of extra information to everybody. I spoke to the bid manager this morning. She has been working with the other bids in the nation to come up with the best ideas for a plan for Colne. And oh dear, Mary's looking confused.
No? I can hear you now.
So she has created in various headings, promotion and marketing, practical advice, actual things that people might need. For example, they've already created the very smart Colne stickers for people to be waiting, and all the businesses have got those for free that have requested them for social distancing. So she tells me that within a week she could have with Graham the full plan with the costed line items for the various elements. And it sounds like it would be in the realm of about £25,000, of which £4,500 would come directly from central government to the bid, and about £5,000 potentially, though it would have to go in front of the bid board, would come from the bid itself. So it would give us a bigger pot than we already have. In other words, we've got 15,000. We could have another 10,000. And the great thing about the bid is they are controlled by business for business, and they have methods of communication using modern technology as opposed to letters or hand delivery, telephone numbers and emails and newsletters and so forth.
Okay, I've got Councillor David Clegg.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's fair to say that the bid has gone a long way down the road with this, and they have got a lot of things organising, and they are doing a good job. But what we've got to be mindful of here, Chairman, is there are about 300 businesses within the Colne bid area. There are also about somewhere between 100 and 200 more businesses in Colne that are not within the bid area, and we don't want to leave those businesses out. We've got to find some way of bringing them in as well.
Okay, do you have a suggestion as to how we can do that? Because what I'm mindful of is these businesses are supposed to be opening on Monday. Yeah. So talk about playing catch up is not a fair description. No. This is stable doors, really.
Well, I personally think we need some sort of a working group that's going to get functioning and get organised quickly, because some of these businesses that are outside the bid area, they don't want leaving out. And I don't honestly know, Chairman, how we bring them into it.
Chair.
Yeah, I've got Councillor. I'll come to you, Councillor Lord. I've got Councillor Greaves indicated, and then Councillor Foxley, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Lord. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just following up what Councillor Clegg said and what Councillor Coburn-Price has said, I think there are a number of different strands here. We are very fortunate, I think, that we've got the bid in place and it can step up to the mark immediately and put forward projects, and has got the contacts throughout the country of getting best practice from other places. I think this is excellent. And I think that having them taking the lead here is a real benefit for Colne. I don't think it's just about what happens on Monday. I think it's what happens on every Monday and every week for the next 12 months. And perhaps, who knows? We have no idea what the impact of the COVID-19 crisis is going to have on the town centres of this country. And we've no idea what impact it's going to have on Colne. We can hope that we can mitigate, we can hope that we can do things to keep the town centre going, and where there are obvious problems occurring, businesses closing down, premises becoming empty perhaps, then we can take action about that. What we don't know is how many people are going to come back on Monday or in the next week or two and try and get going and discover that actually it's no longer viable. And so it's not just an immediate problem, it's a problem that's going to go on. And we're going to need more money and more resources than this amount of money that's being provided from central government. What central government's actually doing is using European money, which everybody was frightened was going to be lost if it wasn't spent before the end of this year. And okay, they said, okay, we've got this pot of money, we're going to use it for this purpose. But because it's European money, it is constrained in what it can be used for. And there may well be things we want to do in Colne, I think there are, which this money cannot be spent on. Now, where we get extra money, Councillor Coburn-Price has said that there are some more sources, that's good. But in the longer term, we're going to have to look at our resources as an area committee. Pendle's going to have to look at its resources across Pendle. And frankly, the town council is going to have to look at its resources and see what relatively small amounts of money we can get together to do things that we need to do for Colne in the next 12 months. And this is where I think what Clegg is suggesting comes in. I'm not suggesting in any way that the bid should be undermined or that and what they're doing, they shouldn't go ahead and do this immediately because it's right. But I think some sort of working group is going to be needed over a period of time, perhaps led by the bid, that involves Colne Town Council, because Colne Town Council has resources, involves, if I say councillors in Colne, I mean this area committee really, which has got resources, not a lot, but we do have resources every year, and working together, and there may be other groups in Colne that ought to be involved in this. And so what I would propose is that we agree with what Councillor Coburn-Price is suggesting in the short term, that we look to, because the short term is the short term and it has to be done, that we look to setting up some kind of working group to look at the future of Colne, to monitor, to make sure that what is happening is monitored and somebody knows what's happening, and to take action when there are clearly problems arising. There may be problems arising in particular parts of the town or particular parts of the town centre. There may be problems arising in particular sectors. We don't know how the hospitality sector in Colne is going to respond to this and is going to recover from this. And as we know, particularly in the bottom part of the main street, it is a very important part of the Colne economy. And we don't know, as Councillor Clegg says, how it's going to affect businesses which are scattered around and aren't actually in the bid area. So I would propose, in addition to, and I hope she'll accept this, in addition to what Councillor Coburn-Price is proposing, that we ask for discussions to take place on how this might happen between the different bodies before the next meeting of this committee, and a report on the way forward, looking across the next year as to where we can get resources, what we can do and how we can do it, involving bringing together in some sort of working group or working party or something like this, all the different interests in the town. Because what's happened in Colne over the years is fantastic. And what's happened in recent years is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Colne has survived. You ask the traders, they'll poo-poo if you tell them that it's prosperous. But Colne has survived in a way which most similar towns in the north of England and other areas have not been able to survive. And it's done it because everybody at different times has been working together. We've got to keep that going in what could be really perilous circumstances. So I wonder if Councillor Coburn-Price would accept that as an amendment.
Okay, just before I go back, I've got a couple of other speakers that have indicated. Neil, am I right in saying this money has got to be used within 2 months? No, you're muted.
Sorry, I think it's January, Chairman.
By January?
Yeah.
So we've got time. Okay, so that's fine. I just wanted to check, because if we've got to do it in 2 months, we've got to come out the trap spending money as we're going to run out. So that's fine. If somebody could just confirm that with me sometime after the meeting, to make sure that that is the case, then in which case we do have time. So I've got Councillor Foxley and then Councillor Coburn-Price again.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I would have thought that the Colne bid is in a position to work in partnership with anybody it chooses to do at any time. And in this instance, I would have thought that all it would take was for the Colne bid to work in partnership with Pendle Council to help Pendle Council distribute this money in an appropriate way from a council's perspective, which I agree should include a requirement to serve all the needs of all the businesses in Colne, and not just those within the Colne bid area. But I can't see that that causes a conflict from Colne bid's point of view, and perhaps either Councillor Clegg or Councillor Sarah Price would clarify that for me. But I suppose where I'm coming from is that I can't really see that there's necessarily a need to set up another working group for Pendle Council on the Pendle Council side, because this committee would surely monitor the process if Colne bid were asked to take the lead on this, and not just as an emergency measure in the short term. I would suggest that that could be the very best result all round. I would welcome comment back from the other two councillors involved with the bid.
Okay. I've got Councillor Coburn-Price has indicated to speak.
Chair, did you forget me?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Lord. I can't see you on the screen and you haven't got a hand up.
Can you not? Well,
No,
I don't have
hear you. Go on then. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not on the screen, so sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I
Yeah.
think.
I can see you.
Right. I think we should have a working group, and I think that a working group should be set up as soon as possible. We're, to coin a phrase, we're all in this together, and the more people that can contribute and help, the better. The town, as I've been in the town for the last few weeks with the masks, that indicates to me the way that the masks are going, that people are very, very keen to come back into the town and start supporting the businesses. And one thought I had a couple of weeks ago was that maybe from somewhere we could have temporarily a town centre officer or a town centre warden type of person that can be provided from anywhere really, Pendle Council, Pendle Leisure Trust, somebody that can take this on and patrol the town, maybe not every day, but just to give out help and advice when people need it or if they see that they need it. That's my thoughts on it. But the working group, I do think we need to have that. We need to have that, and then we all know where we are, what we're doing, how we're going to do it, and get this town up and running as quickly as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I've got Councillor Coburn-Price. You wanted to come back?
Yes, I think I can offer some words of comfort about the businesses that aren't within the hereditaments of the Colne bid. Yes, they're not on their database, but quite a few, the Colne area for the bid was drawn because two major businesses, a supermarket and a large department store, didn't want to take part in it. However, both those businesses have now indicated that they would like to become associate members. And there are other people as well on the edges. And it's something that bids do, you know, as they operate and people see that they're successful, they draw people in informally. And then when they go out again to referendum, they increase their bid area and increase their sphere of influence. So I did discuss it with Lisa this morning, and I didn't say it in my opening remarks. But obviously, all of this advice, stickers, whatever, in this first phase would be open to all businesses, and it would be down to the bid to go out and actively seek those businesses that aren't in its area. They were going to they have a plan which is really divided into three. Before the whole COVID-19 thing took off, we were creating and had done the photography for, including the pictures of our Christmas lights, a Christmas shopping guide for Colne. So we already had plans of promotion all the way to Christmas. So I would think that 15 divides really nicely by 3. So may I suggest that what we do is we look at the 15 and we say, actually, we don't have time for a working group. £5,000 is almost for an immediate spend, immediate promotion, immediate help, hand sanitizer, whatever, for those businesses as an emergency. And that could be best administered by the bid because it's about the town centre, but they could put out a call to those other businesses outside their area. And then the working group, I think Councillor Greaves is correct here, we take the time to work with the town council to see if we can suck in some extra funding. My word of caution to Councillor Lord would be the brilliance of the bid really is they are business people. So we're looking at it as councillors from our perspective. They are looking at it from getting the business going on. So I think we should make sure that we're first and foremost listening to them rather than potentially as councillors we may wish to spruce up the bus shelters or paint a bench. That's not a thing. We need to be really driven by the business case.
Okay, I've got Councillor Mann. Councillor Mann, switch your microphone on, please.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, I'm a business owner that's probably not going to be opening soon, bed and breakfast. However, I am also outside the bid area, and I've not really had any obvious, because I don't contribute to it, any information at all about getting back into business and receiving any help. And I'm just concerned that those businesses that aren't in the bid area will be obviously in the same situation as I am. So I would really like to help the bid to go around those businesses and to give out the information that the bid businesses have already got. I do like the idea that we have sort of an ambassador really walking around Colne, giving advice, helping people out, allaying fears in the town centre. That would be wonderful. Another sort of concern that I've got is each business is supposed to have a risk assessment when it opens. Who is looking at those risk assessments?
Yeah, okay. So I've got Councillor Mary Thomas wish to speak.
Yes, I just want to speak, not on behalf of Colne Town Council, but I do think it's important that we're talking about Colne here. If it gets to Pendle or County or further away, I think we need to have the money in Colne so we can decide, the area committee and the town council and the bid and the businesses can work together and decide where we spend it, rather than, you know, somebody who doesn't know Colne very well says, well, we've given Nelson this and you can have it, but you've got to use it for the same thing that Nelson. So I'd like to say that the town council would like to be involved in any working group, or at least have some input. Thank you.
Okay, so I think I've heard two basic proposals. One is for a working group going forward, and that's probably long term if everybody's sort of pretty much in agreement with that statement. And the other one is perhaps a little bit more urgent. Let's give the bid some money, or not give them some money, tell them that they have the opportunity to bid in for some money, providing they meet the criteria of this document, and that could be more imminent, maybe in the next couple of weeks. Are you basically in agreement with that? Councillor Greaves? Councillor Greaves, if you unmute, Councillor.
I agreed with everything that Councillor Coburn-Price said, but that be put on record. She got it absolutely right, but I don't think it's just bidding in at the moment from bid. I think we say to them, here's this money, go ahead, and certainly the first 5,000, if that's what she's suggesting, go ahead and spend it, subject to having it simply approved, rather than bidding in and then lots of discussion. And then the longer term things, we all get together and say how we're going to rescue this town from disaster.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. I phrased it that way because I phrased it your way with the officers, and they said, no, you can't give them the money. You're not allowed to. So yes, I'm absolutely there with you. It's just that what we've got to say, this money is available. You come up with a scheme. I say, yes, that scheme's all right. And then we can give them the money for it.
It would help if you... Sorry, can I just ask that you consult with us as well?
But by all means, you can nominate two of yourselves to do it. I'm just...
No, I mean, it's just a question of knowing what's going on, that's all. I'm sure you'll make the right decision.
Absolutely. So if we can say... I'll stick with what Councillor Coburn-Price suggested. So we got 15,000 and some loose change. If we say £5,000 is available for the bid to use immediately, or to bid in for, and then we're going to keep the other 10 back until we've got some idea about a working group. Is that what is being suggested? You're happy with that? So who is going to set up the working group? Who's going to do the work on that? Any suggestions?
I do genuinely think it should be bid driven, and they need to, you know, sort of call in us, the town council, some of whom are the same people. that sort of helps in a way, and make sure that the hereditaments not in the bid area are on board and part of it, and say, you're not in the bid area, but for this, be part of it. You know, let's open that Colne. I have a tiny bit of advice for Councillor Mann, which is that if she contacts Pendle Borough Council's Michael Duck, he will come to her guest house, he will do the full H&S analysis, and then he'll give her a big poster she can put in a window.
And we have a comprehensive report at the next meeting of this committee.
I actually think we can do better than that. The report for the short term, medium term and long term will be with Councillor Waugh by the end of next week, and it makes sense to me that we all view it and see it and see what the immediate costs are, and then we can see what's coming next, and that helps inform our very first meeting with other agencies.
Okay. Councillor Lord, you were trying to speak?
Yeah, just to say, can you hear me, Graham? Yeah. To make sure that this working group is set up as quickly as possible. Yeah. Thank you.
If I can suggest then the resolution, the first resolution is £5,000 of the 15,413 is earmarked to use immediately on the work stream that Colne bid has started, and it is open for them to bid in for that money, and it will go through me with your authority, and I will get it okayed by one of the officers of the council to check that it's okay. So it's not just my say so. And then the second part would be to ask the bid that there is another £10,000 available long term for a group to act, of which we would like them to take the lead with the Colne Town Council and anybody else. Is that your resolution?
I'd like to make it more long term than just the 10,000. The 15,000 we've got is not going to be anything like enough.
I understand that. Yeah, I totally understand that.
For 10,000 and future activities, projects, whatever.
Absolutely. This is the seed corn. We're going to try and get some more money, obviously, for that group, but that's something for the group to work on. I mean, we still have a Colne area. As much as I like to see the councillors with the individual money, maybe this year it's time to think of something a little more grander than that. If we've still got that pot of money, 40-odd thousand pounds or so, which I think is our budget still, that could be with the 10. That's starting to sound more like a reasonable chunk of money to use long term. But, you know, we'll see. Mr. Watson, you wish to speak?
Chairman, just one thing. It was mentioned about individual risk assessments by Michael Duck. Just to be clear, he won't do individual business risk assessments. Okay, I just needed to make that. I didn't want, because this is being webcast, I didn't want people coming on expecting that to occur. That's not a service that we'll provide.
Okay. So
I misunderstood that based on an email that he sent me. I'm sorry.
Okay. So if we're happy with those two resolutions, I would ask then Sarah and David, who have the contact with the Colne bid, to make sure that they totally understand what we're proposing, which you can only really do in a conversation rather than the written document. And let's see how it goes. Councillor Foxley, anything you wish to speak?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I would support that. What I was meaning was the gist of what I was saying was that I felt this should very definitely be Colne bid led. Obviously, working in partnership and having a working group amounts to more or less the same thing, but it's about who's taking the lead, and so I do agree with what's been proposed.
Providing we are kept in the loop, which is part of the resolution, that we are involved in it and we get regular updates. We've got our conduit with David and Sarah. If there's something happen we don't like further down the road, then we can always tell them that face to face and get something changed, can't we? Are you happy with that? So everybody,
Chairman, if I may, just it probably goes without saying, but we haven't got the money. The money has to be claimed back after. So we claim that money back. We just need to be clear that it's used for this purpose. I think it will be, but I just need to say this for the purposes as set out in the document.
Absolutely. But what I've said, Neil, is that they will know it's got to meet that document. I will look at it. and then I will pass it on to Philip or Dean, complete shoulders at 45 degrees, and let them make the final decision. So then if there's any comeback, it will come back to their desk and not mine. That was the idea. Okay, so we're all happy with that. Is anybody against it? Okay, so that is unanimous. So now we have to go back because I missed one with me dropping off the edge of the world. So we have a certificate of lawfulness. That's planning item 0093 at County Brook. It's down for approval. I have no comments from the parish council. It's my ward and I have no comments other than to approve it. Can I assume you're all in favour unless somebody wishes to speak to the contrary? No? Then that is the meeting concluded. Thank you very much indeed for attending.
No, sorry, Graham, my hand was up.
Oh, right, sorry. Go on, Jonathan, please.
Thanks. I was going to say that there have been, in the papers though, there are some concerns brought by nearby residents, I'm assuming. Firstly, one question for Neil. What is a certificate of lawfulness in respect of what we are deciding now? Do we have any sway whatsoever? I've not really come across this term before.
Through you, Chairman, it's simply establishing in law what a use can be or a development. You can have a certificate of lawful development. That's what it technically is. So it either complies with it or not. It's not a case of looking at the merits of should this happen there. You know, the water supply has been brought up as an issue. It is a matter of law. Would this use be lawful or not? This case, I've got to say, is extremely straightforward. It would be lawful, and being blunt, that should be the end of the conversation with it, because you can't consider other issues in deciding whether to grant it or not.
The other thing, Jonathan, if you remember the children's home, which is in an ordinary domestic setting in a very nice 5-bedroom house that cost a lot of money in a very secluded part of Fulridge, was turned into a children's home. Dorothy knows about it. She visited it. They did that without planning permission, and that is a fully run business. There's if you go there now, there'll be 7 cars parked in the drive, and they do not need planning permission for it. This is a similar thing insofar as they're doing something, but it doesn't require any planning permission, is my understanding. So I don't know why the reason this has come before us, but it has. Councillor Lord, please. No, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry,
no, I'm here now. I'm here. I'd just like to make a personal comment about this. Having worked in children's homes for 30 years, and I used to work in homes where there were 10, 20 children. You know, you wouldn't have 20 children in your family, would you? And so they've moved on now. I mean, there are still homes where there are perhaps 10, 12 children. But this concept of having just 2 or 3 children in a home, which allows them to be in more of a family setting than in a children's home. So, you know, that's my personal view, and I think that's wonderful. It's wonderful. Gives the children a better chance in life, for one thing. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Nixon, you wanted to say something further.
Thanks. Yeah, if it could just come back. The reason that it's on the paper is because it's received more than 2 objections from local residents. I just thought it would be remiss of us to at least not acknowledge that fact. There's obviously, I've got no problem with it, but obviously some people do in the vicinity. And a letter of objection has been placed on the planning portal. But Neil has explained what the crack is, and we are where we are, I suppose, with that one. But there must be some basis for the concerns of the residents. Yeah. That's all it was, Graham. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fine.
Can I just address that? When I did visit that home, when I was a county councillor and I was on the children's board, and you were given homes to visit in your area, so we had 5 in Pendle. We used to have almost 10, I think, at one time. And that's going back 4 or 5 years now, maybe 4 or 5 years. And they were having problems, and there were more than 3 children in that home then. And they were mainly teenagers, and they were definitely having problems. The neighbours round were having problems. I thought I reported that back to Lancashire County Council and to social workers and whatever, and I thought they'd address that. So whether there are still problems, I'm not sure, Jonathan. I'm not sure. All right.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think the point is it's not within our gift to say we like it or we don't. That is the point I think Mr. Watson's making. It's not a planning issue. We can't refuse something. They're not applying for something. It's just a business of lawfulness, and it's lawful, and that's the end of it. Whether the residents are for it or against it, in actual fact, is immaterial, as it turns out. It's whether it's lawful or not. So we couldn't refuse it, even if we agreed with all the residents. So there we are. So anyway, unless anybody else has anything to say, I would suggest that we approve that as recommended. Is anybody against that approval? So that's unanimously approved then. Yeah. Okay. Unless anybody else has anything they wish to ask or say.
Yes, please. I would just like to make a plea. Quite a few people, Victoria, Neil Butterworth, etc., can't come to these afternoon meetings. And I really would like Pendle Council to be focused on putting it back to 7 o'clock so that as many of us as possible, I know there are shifts and people have emergencies. Poor Margaret has an emergency this afternoon. Things happen. We can't always make it, but it really rules out people with jobs on the whole. And I know that Councillor Nixon's employer has given him a special dispensation to be off work to be here today. It's not good, really, I feel.
Okay, does everybody agree with that sentiment, or is anyone against? Councillor Foxley wish to speak? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You will be aware of my correspondence with Philip Mousdale over this very issue, and I would just reiterate really what Sarah has just said. I think it's a very important issue that we move these meetings back to an evening, if at all possible, and I don't see any reason why that should be unachievable. Okay,
Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be going back to work when this meeting's finished, just to be clear. My understanding is that we can't have it in the evening because Liberata will not be able to provide RT support. Now, frankly, that is terrible. That smacks to me of tail wagging the dog. We give Liberata the contract. We should be telling them we need RT support in the evening so that we can, so that councillors can undertake the duty that they're elected to do. If I misunderstood, then so be it, but I would certainly welcome a return to evening meetings. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Foxley.
Can I just ask, who is fulfilling the role at this moment in time as IT support?
Chairman, if I may.
For this meeting.
Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, go on then. And then
it's not simply IT. It's we have 3 other staff who have to run this at the moment, including all the committee staff, and they wouldn't be available in the evenings at present. So it's not liberated, to be fair to them. They have there are other considerations about the availability of other staff to run these. The intention is to review this once we've got through this, and if we can simplify the process, then we're fully aware that the wishes by the majority of members to move back to an evening meeting. So it literally has been the logistics of getting this together, and I must admit, the Democratic Services staff have really worked their socks off to do this, and it will be unfair for them to do 4 evening meetings for 3 or 4 hours until we've got this right. So the intention is to try and get it back to evening meetings once the process has been smooth. And it's not been an easy ride. It's been quite difficult to organise and run, but hopefully we'll have learnt a lot from this. And at some point, I can't guarantee when, because it won't be my decision, we can get back to an evening meeting.
Chair, can I just say that not to find out what this was all about, I earlier this week watched another area committee in another town, which will be nameless. I'd just like to congratulate you and Neil and Lynn and everybody else on how well this has gone compared with the other place.
Councillor Greaves, I'm joking here. I'm going to have to go and have a stiff drink. Thank you very much for that. Well, I'm glad it has worked out well. I was going to support what Neil had said. Is with Lynn actually attending the meeting and taking notes. When I dropped off the edge of the world, I was having a conversation with Jane, who was then sending me messages to get me back into Teams. So that was all happening while the planning was being discussed. So there are people doing the swans in the background with the feet going like hell, trying to keep it all going. But anyway, so I thank all the staff. Jonathan.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, I didn't mean any offence to the council officers or anybody. It was just
sure.
My understanding was that we were being dictated by Liberata, so I'll just to clear that one up.
I think we still have said it is our request that we would prefer to go back to evening meetings, and if that sentiment could be passed on to the officers of the council, that's fine. If they can manage it, I hope they will. If they can't, then we have to understand that.
Chairman, I think the Chief Executive's listening to this. He was a few minutes ago. He contacted me, so the message will have got back loud and clear.
Sure. Well, if I could just clarify, the response I got back from Philip Milesdale implied that the issue was the IT backup from Liberata. It didn't say quite that, but that was my understanding from it. So if that's not the case, then that sounds like good news, and we hopefully can move forward in the right direction.
Yeah,
good. Right.
Okay, we'll draw a halt then, and thank you all very much for attending, and I look forward to seeing you all in 4 weeks' time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.